Hey there, Nicole from Hair of the Dog Academy. In this video, I want to share with you the incredible power of RAW and how we can take the image on the right to the image in the left in just a few quick clicks in Lightroom. And this is a great way for you to preserve the details of the sky in a situation where maybe you can't have any additional lighting to put on the dog. So you have kind of that different exposure there, and it is amazing what some of these newer cameras, the details that you can pull out of those shadows. So let's get started. Now, as far as how far you can push your shadows in your images, really depends on your camera. I'm shooting with the R5 right now, and I was pretty much flabbergasted at how much detail came up out of those shadows because my old 5D, even my 1DX, I don't know, I feel like I couldn't pull the shadows quite as far as I can on the R5. I don't know what kind of voodoo magic they put in there, but it's pretty awesome. So anyway, when you do pull up those shadows though, you are going to notice some noise in your image, and that just comes with the territory of pulling up your shadows. There are some third-party noise reducers. You know, Lightroom has something that works fairly good, but there's Nik and Topaz and Imagenomics that all have noise reduction software that works really, really well. They all work well, so you don't have to, there's not one that's better than any of the others. But then you can just run anything through there if need be. So in an ideal situation, again, I might have used some off-camera flash here on this image on the right to get that exposure of the dog a little bit closer. But that off-camera flash would not have reached the trees and those mountains behind. So, you know, it's a trade-off. It's just a good way to kind of test and know what your gear is capable of so you can make the best decision for the situation that you're in and the image that you want to capture. All right, are you ready to get started? Let's get to it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and edit this image here, and we're gonna see if I can remember what I did to bring that other one down. All right, let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm here in the develop module. I'm gonna go to this basic module first, and I'm going to pull up those shadows first, actually. So I'm pulling those shadows all the way up. And then I'm going to go ahead and crop my image, straighten my horizon because, well, it's physically impossible for me to actually shoot with a straight horizon. Nope, not quite straight there. There we go. Straighten that sucker out. Dogs on the rule of thirds over here. I like it. All right, so now we pulled those shadows up. I'm still going to want just a little bit more exposure here, so I'm going to pull that exposure up a little bit. I am going to pull those blacks down a little because whenever you pull your shadows way up, it kind of loses some contrast in the image. So you're going to want to possibly pull those blacks back down. All right, I'm going to pull up this exposure just a touch more. And then I'm going to go ahead and do our sky first. So I'm going to grab my mask. I'm going to select the sky. It's going to make a mask here, figure out what it wants, and then, well, it selected a lot of the dogs, so then I'm going to go subtract. Oops, not subtract sky. Burp, wrong button. Let's delete that one. Okay, subtract subject. All right, there you go, Lightroom. Boom, just like that. And now we're going to go ahead and adjust our sky. So I'm going to bring the exposure down a little. I'm going to go ahead and make this more yellow and also more pink. It was such a brilliant sunset, all sorts of beautiful colors. So I'm going to adjust this temperature and tint to the way that I remember seeing it in my eye. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull those highlights up a little, and maybe just a little touch of the whites. There we go. And dehaze. I need a disclaimer on the dehaze. It gets really crazy, really bad. Don't do that. It's obviously terrible. But even like anything over like 10 or 15, I feel like starts to look really heavy-handed. So if I use any dehaze, it's truly just like a little teeny tiny touch because it's really, really sensitive. So with great power comes great responsibilities. Use it wisely. All right. I'm thinking that looks pretty good for our sky. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done here. And then I am also going to create a new mask and go linear gradient, kind of pull it down from here. I'm going to subtract my subject again. And then I'm going to add some blue because there was some blues up top. So we had the blues and the pinks and the yellows down by the horizon. So I wanted to add some blues back in there. Actually, to go more blues over this way. There we go. Coming in from the side because there's so much dark over here with this pink sky. Really, the blues were right up here. So just about there. Do that to taste. Maybe walk away for a minute and then come back and make sure it still looks how you envisioned it and what you remember it as, because our eyes start to play tricks on us if we are looking at it a little too long. All right, so next up we need to add some more light here on our dog. Our dog is kind of dark. So let's go ahead and create a new mask. Be careful doing this. A lot of people I see are like, oh, I'll select the subject and then I'll just pull the exposure up. Yeah, that usually doesn't look very good because it's just like right there. We want kind of that whole area to pull that exposure up. So we're not going to do that. We are going to go ahead and delete that mask. And instead, I'm going to create a radial gradient mask. And I'm just going to kind of adjust it here where I kind of want my eye to be, which is on the dog, a little bit of these trees, a little bit of this area on the rock. Maybe make it a little skinnier and adjust it this way. So then we will go ahead and pull our exposure up just a touch that way. And that's looking pretty darn good. I think I would actually, you can do this more in Lightroom. I would probably take this over into Photoshop and do a little bit more touches over there. But we can keep going here. We're going to keep digging in all with Lightroom. So now I want to, I keep saying done with my mask. I should just leave that open. It's all going to be masks now. I am going to create a new mask and it's going to be brush, and we're going to get in really close because I want to go ahead and brighten up these eyes a little bit. So we're going to get really little brush here. We're going to kind of pull that exposure up and just brush on our eyes. Brighten them up a little with that catch light. Oh, and then it's taking a while. Lightroom is slow today. Okay, so there we go. And then we can go ahead and turn this on and off. And you can see it just brightens it up just a little bit. It's really, really subtle, but that's fine. We like subtle. And then I am going to also create a new mask. Brush. I'm going to make this brush a little bigger. And I want to kind of pull up the shadows a little over here, pull up the exposure a little bit. You know, as I'm doing this, that still works. I like the screen mode in Photoshop for doing this kind of stuff. It just ends up touching the pixels a little bit different. But if you have the Photoshop course, definitely go check out how I do that. I'll link to that lesson here in this, underneath this video too, so you can see how I like to use Photoshop for directing the eye. But you can do the same in Lightroom here, which is what I just kind of showed you. You can see I just used that brush, and you can see what I did with the mask here, is that I just moved it around a little bit. Now, I will say, do you see how my mask has some brighter areas and some darker areas here, but my feather flow density are all up at 100? Well, that's because I have my Wacom tablet here, and I have that set to the opacity right now is based on my pressure. So if I'm lighter, then it's going to be a lighter mask, less opacity, or less flow. And if I am really hard on it, then it'll be darker. So you can change your settings on your Wacom tablet, but that's the difference here. If I did not have those pressure settings, I would likely move this flow down. Density is just another term really for opacity. And the difference between flow and opacity is, like, opacity is if you have something you can't see through and it's 50% density or 50% opacity, it's like, all right, I can see kind of halfway through it. Where flow is, think of like an airbrush, that it's on like 10% flow. So you can just layer and layer and layer and layer. And eventually with the flow, if you layer it enough, you could layer it back up to 100% or more, because it's just a little bit less is coming out of your brush. So think of that as like an airbrush sprayer. Thanks for joining us for this quick edit of that raw file. If you enjoyed this editing tutorial and you'd like to see others, go ahead and hit subscribe down here. And then we also have a link to our free editing training if you want to dive even deeper into pet photography editing. See you around.